What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today, it's Halloween! So happy Halloween! And I thought we should, well, celebrate a little bit. And we should celebrate by having a look at the scariest cards in Keyforge. So, just a couple of honourable mentions before we get going here. And starting off, an honourable mention for two terrifyingly named cards, Sacrificial Altar and Deep Probe. I don't think we need to go very deep, pun intended, into these particular cards to know that we're not happy and we're not impressed and we don't want any more information about them. We'll be just fine, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be just fine. So coming in at number 5, those really annoyingly specific cards that kill everything. The Common Cold would be a nice example here. The Common Cold just destroys every Martian creature. Is that not like a little bit harsh? But there's more than that. And weirdly often it comes as an untamed card. Curiosity. Another example of it. Curiosity comes in and just destroys every scientist creature. Just indiscriminately. Every scientist creature gets destroyed the second this card hits the board. Now, to be fair, it is both yours and your opponent's, but even so, having a card that just comes in and kills everything, no. And then bearing in mind, you get an Aember bonus as well here, just in case flatly destroying every one of a particular kind of creature wasn't enough. Coming in at number 4, anything with Dis. I mean, look, I initially thought, hey, I'm going to make a list of the 10 most Halloween-y cards, but the fact of the matter is that Dis is a house full of grotesque creatures. I mean, we could look at anyone from Overlord Grekking to Gabos Long Arms. I could keep going, but you probably get the point here. It's full of, well, terrifying creatures. But if we move away from aesthetics to actually what the creatures do, how about Aember Imp? Stops you playing more than 2 cards per turn. Well, you might want to play more than 2 cards per turn. Well, gutted, you're not allowed to play more than 2 cards per turn. Kind of annoying, kind of upsetting, kind of annoying. But how about Restringuntis? Restringuntis is even worse. Restringuntis, when you play it, you get to choose a house and your opponent is essentially locked out of that house until Restringuntis leaves play. Okay. Well, what if you've got a hand full of Shadows cards, because everyone plays Shadows, and your opponent drops Restringuntis and goes, boom, Shadows. Well, the problem is that you then can't choose Shadows, which means you can't play any Shadows cards, and you can't discard any Shadows cards, and you're not drawing any cards at the end of your turn, because at the end of your turn you draw till you got 6 cards in hand, but if you've already got 6 cards in hand, and you can't play any of them, then you're not emptying your hand out, which means you're not drawing any extra cards, and do you see where we're going with this, ladies and gentlemen? Do you see where we're going with this? I've seen more than one game, and I'm talking kind of like Vault Tour level games, which have literally been ended when someone just goes, Restringuntis, lock you out of the only house that you've got in your hand. I mean, even if you've got, say, 4 Shadows cards and then 1 Mars and 1 Untamed, well, what are you going to do? Play 1 card a turn and then draw 1 card at the end of your turn? Bearing in mind, sooner or later, one of the cards you draw is going to be a Shadows card, and then you're still just going to end up with a house full of Shadows that you can't play. Sure, you might have stuff on the board already that can take out Restringuntis, but if you don't, it's over. I could have mentioned Gongoozle, whereby you deal 3 damage to a creature, and if it is not destroyed, its owner discards a random card from their hand. I could have mentioned Control the Weak, which lets you choose your opponent's house for them. I could have mentioned Tesmal, that locks your opponent out of a particular house when you reap. I could have mentioned Shaffles, which makes you lose an Aember at the end of your opponent's turn. The point is, this is a fairly terrifying house. In at number 3, Crazy Aember Control. I'm not talking no urchin here. I'm not talking stealing 1 amber. I'm talking about tee-hee-hee, I'm about to forge. Oh, why would you do that? Something like bait and switch pre-errata. Bait and switch, if your opponent has more amber than you, steal 1. And then repeat it if they've still got more amber than you. Now, the way we read it nowadays is it can only work a maximum twice. The way we used to read it is you could keep going. So if your opponent had 11 amber and you had none, you'd end up with 6 and they'd end up with 5? That doesn't seem particularly fair. We've got too much to protect, which just steals all but 6 of your opponent's amber. No matter how much amber they've actually got, you're stealing all but 6 of them. Doorstep to heaven, each player with 6 or more amber is reduced to 5. Bearing in mind that you could have like 50 amber, you go down to 5 and that's not even enough to forge a key. We could mention effervescent principle, whereby both players lose half of their amber, rounding down. And okay, you get to gain a chain, that's not a good thing. But you know what? Most of the time it's going to be fine because you've already basically guaranteed the win anyway. Or maybe something like Shatterstorm, whereby you lose all of your amber, but your opponent then loses 3 times as much as you lost. So if you lose, say, 4 amber, your opponent loses 12. If you've built up a giant store of amber, it's pretty terrifying to see your opponent drop down a card like this and ruin it for you. In at number 2, key cheating cards. Now look, not all key cheating cards were made equal. Redacted is a key cheating card, but Redacted's not terribly scary. If you find Redacted on your first logo's turn, then on your 5th logo's turn, you forge a key for free, assuming that your opponent hasn't been able to get rid of it at any point in those turns. And it's not your 5th turn, it's your 5th logo's turn. You play it down, and then every time you choose logos, you place an amber from the common pool onto it. No. 5th logo's turn, if you had it during logo's turn 1. But how about something like Key Charge or Chota Hazri, that incidentally are the same card? Okay, fine, Key Charge is an action, Chota Hazri is a creature, but they're still basically the same thing. You lose an amber, and then you forge a key at current cost. That's amazing. And they're both in Untamed, which means if your opponent has got 2 keys forged, and you're on check, and your opponent isn't on check, and then they say Untamed, even though you're on check and they're not on check, they might just go, hey, full moon, then a couple of dust pixie, and oh yeah, now I'm going to forge a key with Key Charge. Yeah, that's pretty upsetting. I could have mentioned Key Abduction. That sees a fair amount of play and success as well. These are the best 2 of them. But honestly, any key cheating card can be pretty scary because your opponent just goes, ha, now I've won the game out of nowhere. Gutted. But in at number 1, the scariest cards in Keyforge, the Witches. They're all good. And it's Halloween. What am I going to do? Not put the Witches number 1? That doesn't seem fair now, does it? And we've got a few here. Dusk Witch, probably my favourite of them. Dusk Witch is an Omega card, 1 power, and elusive. And it says your creatures enter play ready. So if your opponent does not take Dusk Witch down right now on their next turn, then all of your creatures enter play ready, which means they can reap or fight or use actions or do whatever they like. No, ladies and gentlemen, Dusk Witch is a very scary card. These are often referred to as Burn the Witch cards because the entire point of them is they're so good, you have got to get rid of them or else you are definitely going to pay for it. Or we could look at Hunting Witch, whereby every creature you play, you gain an amber, kind of like Full Moon, except instead of on this turn, it's until Hunting Witch goes away. Or Witch of the Eye, a very stereotypical witch, I believe is a way to put it. When you reap, you get any card from the discard pile to your hand, which could include a key charge, and we've already talked about how scary that can be. And then Witch of the Wild, my least favourite of them. But during each turn in which Untamed is not your active house, you may play one untamed card. Firstly, that's pretty good. Secondly, it could be a key charge. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to do a Halloween-focused video on Wossy Plays, and I thought the scariest cards in Keyforge would be a good way to go. But if you disagree with any of my choices or my list, or you just want to add your own scariest card, and I would be delighted if you did, then please do so in the comment section. Go nuts and be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow me on Twitter at @TheWossy, where we talk about Keyforge and any other games that take our fancy. And do please consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, etc. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wossy Plays.